What is going on, baseball fans? Welcome to episode 11 of This Week in Baseball, presented by Diamond Digest. A little bit of a smaller crew. We recorded in the morning, and because we are all on different coasts, some people have different sleep schedules, and some people are sleeping off college football losses. So Kelly will not be on this morning. She is an Arkansas fan and was heartbroken from last night's loss. I have a two-man crew with me today, and that'll make the seventh inning stretch showdown a ton of fun. I got Joey Bohley and Diego Franco-Carreno, two returning guests to the show. Gentlemen, how we doing this morning?
Doing pretty good.
I'm also doing pretty good.
As well as you can be, Diego, at 7 in the morning, your time.
Yep.
As he is a walking advertisement with his Diamond Digest coffee mug.
I don't know what you're talking about. That's just the only mug I had available to me that it's also available on our little store thing. So.
Well, it works for me. It works perfectly for me. So,
product placement.
The ALDS and the NLDS have come to a close this week. That's going to be our main topic, kind of looking at the results of those games, what's happened in the time since then. If you hear the birds in the background, by the way, I am on a screened-in patio in Virginia. This is not my normal setting. I don't understand forests and woods and hills. I'm a Midwest guy.
Outside.
But, yeah, in general, just being outside in general. We'll walk through a little bit of the news outside the league as well and preview some of the ALCS and NLCS results. But before we jump too far, let's actually tell you what happened in the ALDS and the NLDS. A lot of exciting games. We'll start on the ALDS side. This might be another loss Kelly is sleeping off. The Houston Astros defeat the Oakland Athletics in 3 games. The A's did take 1 game in that series. Houston continues to roll. This is their 4th straight ALCS. In what I considered probably the most exciting matchup, the Rays beat the Yankees in 5 games. And that game 5 was certainly a well-pitched matchup, a certainly very A's-esque matchup in the way they ended up winning it. The NLCS, the Dodgers, even though it was a 3-0 series victory over the Padres, those games were still pretty exciting. You saw who the better team was, but certainly the Padres were not overmatched. And the Dodgers will go on to face the Braves, who won pretty handily over the Marlins in 3 games. So the results, obviously, we got down to 4 teams. And if you're here and you've done some bracket predictions, good for you. Getting to this point, you've got the Rays and the Astros, and you've got the Dodgers and the Braves. So some familiar faces, some names we probably expected to be there, as well as some names that maybe in some more bold predictions you would have seen here, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Weekly debuts, incredibly, we still have weekly debuts on touching base with the rest of the league. We've got 2, in fact, this week for the playoffs. Shane Mcclanahan, a consensus top 100 prospects heading into this year for the Rays, a left-handed 22-year-old. He made his debut in the ALDS, even though he just pitched only 18 innings above high A ball before this year. Like I said, he's a 22-year-old consensus top 100 prospect who pitched 1 2/3 innings pitched in games 1 and 3 of the ALDS combined, giving up 1 earned run, striking out 2, and walking just 1. On the other side, in the NLDS, Ryan Weathers, a top 100 prospect before the 2020 season, made his debut for the Padres. I'm sure you might have known this. I completely missed it for some reason. His .9 ERA in high school, that stat was shown across the broadcast when he debuted. He pitched 1 1/3 innings, gave up no runs, walked 2, and struck out 1. So 2 pretty fun debuts that, as teams continue to figure out how they're going to handle the the no off days in the postseason, certainly getting creative and seeing a lot of fun and interesting names come up. And finally, in some more disappointing news, some more sad news, Whitey Ford this week passed away at the age of 91. The legend for the New York Yankees. Hal Steinbrenner actually put out a message, a statement. If you find Bob Nightingale, he actually tweeted it out. Just some highlights from that statement. Steinbrenner says, Whitey was New York tough. When you couple that with his dedicated service to our country, a deep love for the only team he ever played for, 6 world championships, and a genuine personality and charisma that showed throughout his life, it's no wonder that he endeared himself as a legend to generations of Yankees fans everywhere. So certainly a tough passing a week after, or another week losing a legend. Certainly difficult news for Yankees fans, the family of Whitey Ford. So our thoughts go out to all of them in such a difficult time. But enough of me talking. I know you guys are here to hear the 7th inning stretch showdown we've got this week. Usually we got 3 names on it. Instead, we will have 2. So a very matchup style-esque. Joey, I don't know if you've played this before. Diego, I'm not sure if you have either.
No?
Yeah, we both have.
You both have? All right.
Last
So
time we were on.
no unfair advantages this week, which we like to hear.
Callie obliterated like my existence last time. Do you not remember
Yeah,
that?
she did.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, so
Just
you're kind of happy.
Decided to end my entire life.
Yeah,
With his Alec Mills take.
that's right. The difference between the 2 no-hitters, the Mills and the Giolito one. Oh, yeah.
That
She
was
can't-
pretty ugly.
Yeah, that was a rough one. Well, hopefully you can bounce back this week. You don't have Callie in your way.
It's true. I am more prepared this time than I was last time. So,
But you
It's
all
not
know
fair.
the drill. 7 questions. You each got a minute to answer. I've been more lenient with awarding points. We'll see what I do here today. Let's start it off. This year, it was announced that the qualifying offer for free agents to be will be $18.9 million, almost a $1 million increase from last year. So my question to you guys is this. How do you think this increase, coupled with the teams being quote unquote affected, and take that as you will, by the pandemic, will impact the amount of qualifying offers we see? Now, keeping in mind that we're not even sure if there will still be a draft pick attached to these qualifying offers. But I guess my assumption is, unless you hear otherwise, assume it will stay the same. Diego, just to help your pride, I'll let you start off first.
all right, that's fair. Yeah. So as far as the qualifying offer goes this year, I think it going up and the effect that it's going to have from this season and the pandemic, I will see the amount of qualifying offers go down. Mostly because, like, assuming it's also going to be the draft pick attached to it, and with the league saying they want to try to do like the whole 5 round draft and all that, they want to kind of maybe keep that going. We're still kind of like unsure about that. So I think the amount of qualifying offers ultimately goes down. It's because I think teams just ultimately aren't willing to like even risk that like I guess like the money, because they're going to claim it's like so tight everything. And how many players are truly worth that 18.9 million tag? I think that's going to be what it ultimately comes down to. And I'm not really sure if there's enough players out there who teams will recognize or think that are worth that much money. So I think the amount ultimately goes down, and that it's just going to be another year of like maybe you see like 3 or 4 guys sign a qualifying offer.
Yeah, it's a good point about that. Who's worth the offer? Who they're going to see is worth it. Because if it keeps rising, you kind of wonder where that point is that it will stop rising.
What's the threshold?
Yeah, where is your threshold on these qualifying offers? But Joey, what you got?
Yeah, I agree with Diego. I think we're going to see a smaller number of qualifying offers this year, just because the main reason mostly is going to be the higher dollar amount associated with it. But also the fact that we do have kind of a weaker free agent class this year all around. Because if you look at the guys that got qualifying offers last year, we got Mad Bum, Garrett Cole, Josh Donaldson, Strasburg, Anthony Rendon, these caliber guys. And, the guys that are kind of coming around this year is going to be Real Muto, Bauer, Springer. But outside of that, there aren't too many big names. So I think we're probably going to see 5 or 6 offers, like the 3 I mentioned before. And then like maybe Marcus Semien or Marcelo Zuna, who also got one last year. But my hot take here is going to be that Andrelton Simmons will receive a qualifying offer from the Los Angeles Angels. And I also think that if anybody signs one this year, it's going to be him. because I don't think that anybody else would pay him that amount of money, like on the open market. And I also think that it is going to be a pretty weak spending market. So I think that would incentivize maybe some of these guys that receive a qualifying offer to think about it a little harder than they normally would. But, you know, Real Muto, Bauer, Ozuna, these guys they're not taking a qualifying offer. They're going to go out on the open market, see what they can get. So that's my hot take today. Andrew Simmons gets a qualifying offer.
That's a good take.
That is a good take. I think that I don't know if there's a better option in this 1 year kind of stretch for the Angels than to kind of bring him back, and even if it just is a stopgap for something they want to do in the future. But
yeah, I mean, they've got that left side of their infield is just so totally stacked. I mean, they've got Rendon, Fletcher, and Simmons for 3 spots, and then they can play Rengifo at second for now at least. So maybe a stopgap to Fletcher being more comfortable there, or something like that.
Yeah.
Good
I think
point.
it'll be interesting too to see, because, you know, there are so many free agents. It's like, are you really worth $19 million? Where it's like, I don't know if seeing the qualifying offer go up this year, and then unless people get the qualifying offer, if that's going to start establishing that threshold we talked about, because you got to figure at some point it kind of removes the point of the qualifying offer if so few free agents are worth it at that point.
Right. And I mean, the Twins tendered Jake Odorizzi a qualifying offer last year,
right,
which honestly blew my mind then and continues to now, especially after seeing how he performed this year. And I think even that one example, maybe, like, I don't think many teams thought that he would have been worth that in the first place, but I think maybe now teams are going to look at it and be like, well, we saw him completely fall off after that. Granted, in a kind of a messed up season, but still a real season. And especially even if with the draft too, with it being probably a smaller number of rounds, each pick is worth more. So I just don't see teams wanting to give that away as much as it did in the past.
Yeah. Point's going to go to Diego here because of that good draft point. I don't think if there's a pick attached that people are going to want to give up the qualifying. I think that's going to be a big part of this and I think that's why it's ultimately going to get removed, and maybe just for this year, because if the draft stays shortened, who's going to sign a free agent knowing they have to give up a draft pick?
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how teams handle that as well, but clearly they don't value draft picks too highly if they're willing to go to 5 to 10 rounds. So what do I know?
Yeah.
I'm only a podcast person.
The league's been very willing to experiment and stuff too, so we might
Mhm.
see some of that here in the next couple of years with the qualifying offer and the draft and the picks attached and all of that. So
yeah, we'll see. Plenty to talk about there, I'm sure. But question 2, as I alluded to earlier, and hopefully you guys know from watching them, we did have some pretty good matchups in the League Division Series. Rays Yankees was a lot of fun. Dodgers Padres was fun, even though it was a 3-0 sweep for the Dodgers. I don't think it felt like one. But my question to you is this, quite simply: which of the matchups was your favorite, and what did these games teach you about the strengths and weaknesses of the remaining teams? Joey, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think pretty clearly that the Rays and the Yankees were the most exciting matchup and the most exciting series. I mean, went to 5 games, came down to a home run in the bottom of the 8th in Game 5, and this whole redemption story with Mike Brasso and Aroldis Chapman. And I think we really learned a lot about the Rays in that series too. They're going to live and die by their pitching, because their offense OPS 713 or something against one of the best staffs in not one of the best, a very good pitching staff. So overall, less than an impressive offensive performance, but their pitching, man, I mean, it wasn't even that good in the division series, but that bullpen, man, that stable of guys that Kevin Cash was talking about earlier in the year, it feels like every night and every inning, they're just bringing out another tall, lanky guy who throws, 101 and has a 2-seam that moves 3 feet. So I think that's what we learned about the Rays. I mean, I think that was the most exciting series too. I don't really know if I have time to get into the other teams, but maybe I'll talk about them a little later.
Diego, what you got?
Yeah, so I think Yankees Rays is undoubtedly like the best or like the most exciting series, but I also really enjoyed watching the Braves Marlins series just because for the simple fact that the Marlins were the Marlins this year. They made it this far. No one expected them to be here. They weren't supposed to be here. And I just love watching good pitching. And the Braves pitching this postseason has been good as the Rays or anybody else. I mean, I'll get into that a little bit later too. But the that series is a lot of fun. It only lasted 3 games, but like I just said, I like watching some good pitching. And like we learned that that's going to be the Braves' strong suit. They are an unbelievably deep lineup, unbelievably deep team, but their pitching has managed to outshine that. And like the rest for the other remaining teams, I think the Rays have a certain tenacity to them that kind of plays in their favor a lot here. The Astros, I mean, the villain storyline really has been, apparent and playing a big role here. And I think that's what they've got going for them the most here so far. And the Dodgers just simply have talent, like up and down that roster. As much as that hurts me to say, they just simply have the talent, and that's what they've got going for them. And it's going to be very interesting how to see those teams, how they implement all 4, like individually implement those kind of strengths that they have going forward.
Point goes to Diego for managing his time wisely and being able to answer the full question. Again.
Whoops.
Oh, well, you live and you learn, and you don't get too worked up over it because it's just 7th inning stretch.
True.
I do agree that, the Rays was the most exciting series for me. Even though Dodgers Padres, you had the fun storylines of, just the bat flipping and everyone getting pissed off over certain things, and that continues to be a storyline and probably will ever be.
But for the next few years.
Yeah. But I think that, when you look at teams who are just completely prepared to do this 5-game series, however it was going to be presented to them, or even the 7-game series coming up, the Rays. You can't think of many teams who were more prepared for how they wanted to handle this, and it's rather impressive. Question 3. This is the first time that a postseason series has been completed without any scheduled off days. As I just alluded to, the Rays seem to be pretty well equipped for that amongst the teams so far. Mm-hmm. My question is this: what are your thoughts on the format so far? Do you think it's changed the game at all, whether for better or for worse, or is it just simply I'm not too concerned about it type thing? But Diego, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I mean, it clearly has made a change. It's made an impact. Personally, I think it's a little worse, if anything, not significantly worse, but a little bit, because it does impact this pitching. It impacts those pitching staffs and how you're using them, and ultimately, it's gonna force managers to really think about how they're using those pitchers and what you're going to see. But you also get the super exciting Game 5 match, like that Game 5 matchup we got. We get Cole, we get Glasnow in short rest. That was one of the most exciting things in sports. That I can remember in recent memory is the matchup, short rest for everybody, and it was just a lot of exciting times and a lot of fun. So being able to get that out of it is something that's fun and exciting. But you also worry about those arms a little bit. You don't want these players to get too fatigued. You don't want to get them hurt. And ultimately, I think the setup they have currently with this postseason is kind of ultimately setting up for a little bit more injury proneness, and I don't know if I like that too much. But it does make for those exciting times. But I think the off days are rather important.
Joey.
Yeah, I mean, once again, Diego pretty much takes the words right out of my mouth. I mean,
Good.
I like it in the sense that there's baseball on every night. I think that's always a plus. But again, I get worried about the injuries, and I get worried about performance on short rest. I was going to talk about Tyler Glass, and I'll talk about him anyway. He threw 37 pitches over 2 1/3, 2 days after throwing, 100 or whatever it was over 6 and change. And honestly, we didn't even see that much of a velo dip. He actually had a higher fastball velo in the game on short rest. So I think he's probably a little amped up for that one. But he only threw 18 strikes out of 37 pitches. So, we really saw some control issues from him. And I think that could become more of a theme as we start to see pitchers get a little more rundown as this postseason goes on, and just the depth of the bullpens is going to become so much more important, which is why teams like the Rays and the Braves are going to be in really good shape, and teams like the Astros might be in less good shape, just because of just having guys in the bullpen. Like I don't even you got to have the guys, the dudes, to go out there, potentially every day and just shove, and that's what these teams are going to need in order to carry them all the way to that piece of metal at the end of the road this year.
Ooh, I was going to give you the tie, but then you threw that piece of metal line in. That was well done. That was really well done. Joey's going to get the point there.
Thank you.
I like that this tests the depth of teams a lot more. I like that you can't just necessarily run out your big three or big two at the front of the rotation and think that's going to be enough. And I think to your point that the injuries is probably going to be something to watch for, something to make sure that, you want to win these games, but you're not pushing them too much. But at the same time, I mean, we talked about this last week on the podcast. I'm treating every game as a must win. I'm not planning for a game 3 or game 4 if I'm not even sure I'm going to get past game 3 yet. So that's the kind of way you're probably going to see it managed. I think they've managed it excellently. But certainly the strength of the staff, the strength of the arms, I guess, and the health of the arms is going to be important for chasing that piece of metal. Joey, well done with that one.
Thank you.
Question 4. Umpiring continues to be a major point of discussion this postseason. I wrote offseason. I meant postseason. With more and more calls for robotic umpires. Propose your ideal way forward for umpiring. It can be keeping things as is. It can be robot umpires, or it could be something in between. Most creative answer wins. Joey, what you got?
So this is a little unpopular opinion among, people our sort of age bracket concerning umpiring, but I don't dislike having human umpires make mistakes. I think that is part of baseball. I think it's part of every sport. I'm not a huge fan of robo umps because I think it takes that aspect out, and teams do scouting reports for umpires now, and I just think that's super fun that you have to know what this umpire favors and things like that. One change I think could be made is that taking away the automatic ejection for arguing balls and strikes, maybe the second time. But sometimes these umpires just got to get an earful, man, because sometimes you see some of these games, they just turn into the ump show, and we're not here to watch you. We appreciate what you do. Know it's a hard job, but this isn't about you. Looking at you, Joe West. So I just think that it just a little more humility from the umpires is a good thing, but also just a little more leniency in terms of players and coaches. Being upset about calls that from home on the broadcast. That was a ball, and he called it a strike, and there was the bases loaded in the 8th inning. So I think that maybe a little more leniency in that department may be beneficial to the game.
Diego.
All right, I thought Joe was going to take my point, but he didn't. First off, fire Angel Hernandez.
All right, Diego's going to get the point, but please continue.
I thought about making that my only point, but I would keep going. C.V. Buckner, Joe West, Rob Drake. Those are the only ones I can think of top of my head. Get him out of here. But no, I agree with Joey, though. I do like the human aspect of it. It makes things a lot more interesting with having to scout those umpires and making sure what you're pitching to, and how the strike zone does change a little bit game to game. But one thing that I would do is kind of maybe implementing those robo umps a little bit, but only in the aspect of if it's a close game, let's say within 3 runs, and that you should be able to challenge a ball or a strike that ultimately ends up deciding the outcome of a plate appearance. So if it's a full count and the ball is 2 or 3 inches off the plate, let's say Austin Slater in the last game of the Giants season, and it ultimately ends a season or something like that, you should be able to hypothetically you should be able to challenge something like that, and it's hey, I want to get that looked at, and with either make it the automatic strike zone thing, or just the consistency of how the umpire's been calling it. We have the technology for that kind of stuff, and just making sure a team doesn't get absolutely screwed from something like that. like there's is a little bit too much human element, like,
Mhm.
and these umpires wanting to make it about themselves, kind of like Joey mentioned. So I think implementing something like that might be useful for everybody and might be better for the game.
I can only imagine. We're in the playoffs. Fans are back in the stands. 3-2 count, bases loaded. Strike 3 called. Wait a minute, we're challenging everybody back on the field. It was ball 4. Oh, I can only imagine how that would go. My personal opinion is similar to you guys. I think there needs to be some human element left. My only thought, if you want to kind of change it naturally, is you got an earpiece in the umpire, and he's allowed to call balls and strikes as he normally would. But if he calls a ball and it's a strike, or strike and it's a ball, someone tells him, Angel, that was a ball. Angel, that was a strike. And you kind of naturally fix it as, like, you kind of see, oh, maybe I need to move the plate in a little bit, or I need to move the plate out a little bit, or something like that. Now, that's going to lead to zones changing through the game, or throughout the game, which is the detractor from that. But I think that if you can kind of naturally fix zones that way, that'd be interesting. But
yeah.
I do think robot umpires is going to piss more people off than they really think, to be honest with you.
I just don't think it's worth it. Honestly.
No, because for as many calls as you lose, man, do you want those calls sometimes?
Yeah.
So say a hypothetical last game of the season, your season's on the line.
I mean, I watched A's White Sox and I was just infuriated half the time. So I feel your pain.
And I mean, like the other thing with the robo umps is, like, if we get those, what purpose does Austin Hedges have? I love watching that guy catch.
Exactly.
I hate watching him hit. But is that, like, framing is such a skill, man. It is so hard to do well. Like, we've seen these videos of Victor Caratini zoom, pulling everything into the zone, and it's bad framing. It's bad.
Yeah.
But then you see that, and you see Austin Hedges just flip that glove a little bit, or Jason Castro flip that glove a little bit, and it's so interesting to watch. It's so much fun,
and you
and I don't want to lose that.
You also bring up a good point with that, because if you take away for a lot of catchers their highest value and the reason they're in the league, you're going to cost a lot of guys their jobs. You're not going to find guys like,
we're going to have more Kyle Schwarber's catching.
Yeah, you're not going to have if Austin Hedges is only going to hit $150 and framing doesn't matter, because I could literally throw anybody back there.
You just stick the DH back there, and then you have 2 DHs.
You lose a lot of players their jobs, because there's a lot of backups in this league who are here because they're good at framing, and there's a lot of starters even that are in their jobs because they're good at framing. I think that's a point that when we all shot, and we've all done it before, we've all shot robo umps. I think that's something that you seriously need to consider if you're going to cost a lot of guys jobs.
Oh yeah, framing is just so much fun to watch when it's done well.
I agree, completely agree. Point went to Diego for Fire Angel Hernandez alone. Joe West was a good shot right there, Joey, though. So don't feel that you didn't take a good shot.
I figured it was 50-50.
I might just have a little bit more current frustration with Angel Hernandez, but what do I know?
I think everyone does.
That's fair. Question 5, fact or fiction, our favorite question of the week. The Chicago Cubs are the most disappointing playoff team thus far, and you can define disappointing however you want. It's just me throwing it out there. So Diego, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I would I don't know if I necessarily agree, but I necessarily don't disagree either. The Cubs they had a little disappointing this postseason thus far, but I think the Cleveland Indians were probably more disappointing to me, because like we've mentioned before, how important pitching has been in this postseason. Like the Indians were as stacked as anybody ready for the postseason pitching. And like, that's what they do. The Indians have been like a fantastic pitching staff. They have a pretty good lineup too. So them getting bounced so early makes things like a little rough. Granted, I mean, the Yankees have been like pretty good and everything. The Yankees made it so far. But the Indians were like a pick to win the World Series in this postseason for a lot of people. Yeah. I remember like Laz, you talked earlier on the season, like gotta watch out for the Indians. They're going to be scary in this postseason format. And they just kind of came out and let down a lot of people. So I think the Indians may be more disappointed than the Cubs, considering like how important the pitching has been and how well equipped they are at that position.
Joey.
Yeah, Indians certainly disappointing. I'm gonna go with fact that the Cubs are the most disappointing for me personally. Because frankly, I was looking forward to seeing them in the NLCS with that rotation, your Hendricks and Darvish, who was absolutely insane this year. And that lineup that maybe was a little cold during the regular season, but I thought, it's the playoffs, they're gonna get fired up. Javi Baez is gonna OPS, something that starts with a 6 instead of a 5. And that just didn't happen. The team OPS 479 and had 9 hits over their 2-game sweep, and they only gave up 7 runs. So it's not like they were getting completely shelled by the Marlins. They couldn't hit anything. So for me, that's more disappointing because I was looking forward to seeing them deep in the playoffs. The other one that I thought of was the A's, just in terms of getting to the ALDS against your rival who was under 500 in the regular season and just not being able to get it done. But I do think that the Cubs were the most disappointing, at least for me personally.
I'm not even sure if I agree with my own question here because it's interesting. I think just the way that I think about the regular season and the postseason, I think just the carryover of the Reds just being such a hyped team heading into this. Just being so disappointing during the regular season and then not scoring in the postseason. It was like that is a team that should have figured it out that didn't. And I think that's another disappointing one there as well. I think all 3 teams I would consider pretty disappointing ones, which is why I'm going to give you both the point, which is it's also funny that the Indians and the Cubs, your 2 biggest disappointments 4 years ago, were in the World Series. So it's funny how quickly things change for these guys. Certainly, I think the Indians. It's harder for me to feel disappointed with them having to face the Yankees. The Cubs having to face the Marlins, I think, is a little bit different of a story. But that also might.
I wouldn't say having to face the Marlins. I would say getting to face them.
Getting to face the Marlins.
It was a privilege for them to be able to face the Marlins.
Yeah, exactly.
I would agree with that.
They were given the honor.
And they didn't do jack. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. Nothing. I think if you look at quote-unquote
just fun.
Easiest matchups going in, that's probably it, besides Dodgers, Brewers. But
I mean, maybe the Blue Jays.
Yeah. And they were enough team where I'm like, I don't want to play them in 3 games. That's the kind of team the Blue Jays were to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah. There's with
something that you said just a second ago.
I just think with the expanded playoffs, there were more teams that excited, but more teams that disappointed, frankly.
True.
Yeah, absolutely. And just what you said about the Reds a second, I'm going to go back to our first question about the qualifying offer. I think that if the Reds had won a game in the playoffs, Trevor Bauer might have signed a qualifying offer. Because, he's always talked about how he wants these 1-year contracts. I don't know if he's going to stick to that.
Perfect.
But I think that if he got any run support in the postseason, he might have just stuck around for another year.
I'm very curious, and I'm sure we'll talk about this. I'm sure we'll talk about this in the future. One thing I'm curious about, along with this qualifying offer point, Joey, is does Bauer stick to his 1-year deal things? I don't think he will. I don't think you can go. You can't have a Cy Young type year and say, "Oh, I'm only going to sign a 1-year deal." It doesn't get much better.
Especially because pitchers are so volatile too. It's so risky. But he's always been kind of a bold risk-taking guy. So I wouldn't put it past him, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he goes 3 years.
I think that's the perfect way of putting it. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised, but yeah. But a story for another day when the postseason is over. Question 6. There have been plenty of both incredible matchups as well as incredible postseason performances thus far. If the postseason ended today, who would be the AL and the NL postseason MVP? Joey, we'll start with you.
So the AL one was pretty tough. I narrowed it down to 3 guys, but I think I'm going to go with Giancarlo Stanton.
Interesting.
Slash line, looking pretty chunky. 308, 387, slug 1038 for 1426 OPS. He had 6 home runs in the 7 games that they've played, which is pretty impressive. Especially the one that Statcast said went 458. That looked like on 510 feet. So I got to go Giancarlo for the AL. but that was a tough choice though, because there's some pretty good candidates there. For the NL, I'm gonna go kind of a dark horse thing. I like Diego was talking about earlier with the Braves pitching. I'm gonna go with Ian Anderson. In 2 starts this postseason, he 11 2/3 innings pitched. They've won both his starts, 17 Ks to 3 walks, .69 WHIP, has an 11 earned run. I mean, it was against the Marlins, and whatever team they played before, who probably also wasn't very good.
The Reds.
But I mean, the Reds. Oh yeah, the Reds. They don't count. But they do, because they're still an MLB team and they didn't score against him. So definitely, I think Ian Anderson. There are fewer candidates in the NL, but I'm a big pitching guy, and I think that Ian Anderson is almost certainly one of the most valuable players this postseason for the NL.
Diego.
Yeah, I mean, those are like really good picks. I really like that Ian Anderson pick because I'm also a big pitching guy. If you've listened to any of our other podcasts or a hot mic where I've been on, you know how much I like pitching. But going kind of with that, I'm also going to go with the Brave for my NL MVP. And not exactly a pitcher, but I'm going to go with Travis d'Arnaud. You know, the catching there, I mean, he was incredible in his last series. Just kind of carrying the Braves offense for a bit. It seemed like anyway. The Travis d'Arnaud has been pretty good this postseason. Been making a lot of teams kind of like turn their heads. It's like he's doing. The Braves got something going there, getting a lot of production from him. And so Travis d'Arnaud, I think, has been just absolutely like insane, at least for a little bit. At least the games I've been able to watch, d'Arnaud's been the games where he's hitting those bombs and doing a lot for his team. And as far as the AL side goes, I'm thinking I'm going to go with kind of like a easier fun pick. No one would expect Randy Arozarena here.
Yeah.
What he's doing has been a lot of fun. It's really cool to watch. And as far when you go and pick like those awards, voters really do like that kind of story of like a Randy Arozarena, a Travis d'Arnaud, like kind of those guys that are like, if you had to go into this postseason and pick a guy, no one's picking those two guys. You're picking the Stantons. You're picking like the Carlos Correas. Like you're picking these bigger names. And so I think a Randy Arozarena and a Travis d'Arnaud, like it's a fun pick. It's a unexpected. No one's going to pick this at the beginning of the postseason, but now easily to see people picking these guys to win this like theoretical if the postseason ended now MVP.
It's a really good point about those stories that you didn't exactly sign these guys to be your postseason heroes, but here they are.
Exactly.
Certainly not the Rays.
They were both on my list. So
yeah. Certainly not the Rays with the Arozarena, and certainly not d'Arnaud with the Braves. I think those are the type of stories I prefer personally as a fan. That
they're fun.
They're fun. It tests how deep you really are as a team. That's what I like most about the postseason.
Especially with d'Arnaud getting DFA'd earlier this year by the Mets.
Exactly.
Of course, the Mets, because who else?
The poor Mets. Poor Mets.
They dig their own holes.
Yeah.
Imagine if the Rays would have picked him up. Because we know how the Rays pick off players and just make them, incredible.
Yeah, I think did he play for the Rays? Like last year?
Mm-hmm. Which is what surprised me.
He seems like
That's interesting though. But I mean, when you have Randy Arozarena, you're already winning the. I wouldn't expect you to be postseason MVP award anyway, but that's the Rays in a nutshell for you. Honestly, you wouldn't expect the big names to do it because why would they? They have plenty of small names to prove you wrong about who the Rays are. Let's move to our final question. New week, more predictions to make. Predict the winner of each of the LCS matchups. I think we can probably guess what's going on here, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts anyway. Joey, we'll start with you.
So I got Dodgers and Rays last. I'm going to be honest. Might seem kind of chalky, but I mean, the Dodgers, they're just so good. I mean, they OPS 815 against the Padres, who, granted, they had like a kind of a depleted pitching staff with Clevenger and Lamet out. But like I said in the Discord, they seem like they're the Rays of the NL. They just keep running guys out of their bullpen. And the Dodgers hit them. And they just have such a stacked offense. That bullpen was really good with Urias, Treinen, Brewstar Gratterall, who got a little help from Cody Bellinger. But, it's an out, and out's an out. And then the Rays we've talked about, they're just so deep in the pitching staff department as well. They do match up really well against the Astros because they've kind of got like the unstoppable force meets the immovable object with the Astros offense I'm going to talk about in a little bit, and the Rays pitching. So I think that's going to be a really interesting matchup, but I'm going to go Dodgers at 5 and Rays at 6.
Sounds about right to me. Diego, what you got?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the Rays pick. The Rays have just been incredibly fun to watch. They beat, the Yankees, and the Yankees were a big pick for everybody. And so I think the Rays have got the momentum going. I think they're going to overpower the Astros lineup with their power pitching and how good it's been. So I like the Rays too. But I can never, ever pick the Dodgers to win a series ever. Never. It's against my DNA. Do not like the Dodgers. 0 out of 10. So, and I think it's not unrealistic to say the Braves can win that series either.
No, yeah.
So me saying the Dodgers are going to lose the first round to the Brewers, that's not realistic, but this is. So I think the Braves definitely had the pieces there. I don't know how confident I am in that pick, but I'm going to say the Braves in 7 and the Rays in 5.
I would much prefer a Rays Braves.
I think most people would.
World Series. I think that would be.
I would prefer it. Yeah, but the Dodgers are really good.
They are, and I can admit that, but I'm not going to pick them.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way with the Braves.
That's fair. That makes sense.
I forgot we got an NL West and an NL East guy right now.
Yeah.
So it's all good. I don't know. I think I would have a hard time seeing the Astros find a way to get past the Rays pitching. Honestly.
Oh, absolutely. No one wants to see it.
I don't think anybody wants to see it, and I think at the same time, plenty of people have discounted the Astros, and that's kind of why we're still talking about them for the 4th consecutive year in the ALCS.
Unfortunately.
But certainly a team that you love them, you hate them. They're a good ball club. They're not going to go away easy, but I do think the Rays pitching will give them the advantage there. I don't know. It depends on what version of the bullpen we see come out with that one. So certainly plenty to watch there. But
that's true.
I'm excited for some more games, some more matchups. Again, just interesting, different things that happen with no off days with these rounds until the World Series, of course.
Yeah.
But Diego, congratulations on your win in 7th inning stretch.
Yeah.
So pick up the first one, Joey.
It was a pretty thorough drubbing. It seemed like.
No, you were right there. You had it. You had your good one-liners, and that's what it takes to win this sometimes.
I did.
But let's move on. Let's talk about our storylines. Oh, go ahead, Joey.
I said maybe next time when I come on, I won't go up against Diego and actually have a chance.
Well, the problem is you'll have.
Because last time I was on against Diego too.
Yeah, that's right. This is the second time we've had you two together.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Callie she shelled me last time.
So
yeah, I think
Callie's always a tough one.
Beat both of us pretty well.
Callie's a character. She makes it hard for whoever we run out here. I don't think
fantastic.
Too many have one outside of her.
No, she's fantastic.
So let's talk about our storylines. Certainly much fewer storylines to talk about since there's only 2 matchups. But Diego, we'll start with you as the winner. What's your storyline from either this week coming forward or the week previous those matchups?
Yeah, so my storyline that I picked was, we've ultimately talked about it quite a bit here already, is the Rays shot at a World Series. I mean, I think a lot of people are picking them to win the series over the Astros. A lot of people want to see them win that series over the Astros. And I think they're very capable of doing that. So I think the Rays, they have the pitching for sure. And that's what they're going to have to ride to the World Series and hopefully a World Series win for them. And I think they can match up against anyone, really. The Dodgers clearly are going to be the toughest matchup for any team left in the playoffs. But I think if any team can kind of, put out guys to defeat that lineup, that super team, it's going to be the Rays. The Rays, I just think the pitching is so important still. Even heading into if they make it to the World Series, you do have those off days then.
Yeah.
But the Rays, I just think they're a fun team to watch. I mean, the Rays the pitching's incredible. The no name guys in the lineup that you don't expect to be doing anything, who go and just will hit the ball a mile when you least expect it. I mean, it's just fun, and I want to see the Rays do well. I want to see them win that World Series. I want to see them go out there and compete against like the big market Dodgers and win. And so we'll see how it goes. But the Rays shot a World Series. I think it's not unrealistic to say they can do it. I'd love to see them do it. So the Rays. That's it. The Rays.
The Rays. There's your storyline.
The Rays.
Joey.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the Houston Astros offense a little bit. So during the regular season, I mean, they were just painfully mediocre for Astros fans. They were, they had a 99 WRC plus, which is right below the average. And they were right in the middle of the pack in runs scored in 14th, below average walk rate, below average WOBA, below average FWAR from hitters, below average OBP, below average OPS, and below average at-bats per home run. And then we come out here in this postseason and they're hitting. And a lot of this is, Correa and Bregman and they're big boppers. But, I mean, they're scoring almost 7 runs a game. They're getting on base 35% of the time. 839 OPS, which is 120 points higher than it was during the regular season. And, granted, this is all small samples. I mean, the regular season is a small sample. Postseason's they played like 6 games. So it's an even smaller sample. But, it kind of seems like that they've come out here with, we've been seeing they're talking about this revenge and people are, saying we can't hit and we can't play because we did this. And, I don't need to get into that. Everybody's seen that. Excuse me. But they're coming out here with just a new mindset. They're hitting, a home run every 16 at-bats. It was 29 during the regular season. It could be a factor of, the A's pitchers just lob it in meatballs. Which it did seem to be doing for a good portion of that series. Sorry, Callie. But yeah, just their offensive resurgence this postseason has been quite impressive. I'm curious to see if they can continue it against, 15 guys that throw 98 miles an hour and, strike out everybody.
Yeah, I think the Astros offense is definitely something that, you probably didn't expect coming in, kind of like with your numbers there. And I think that's going to match up very well for the Rays personally. The only fear I have, and maybe it's not a fear, my thoughts thinking about Rays Dodgers, the biggest of the big market and the smallest of the small market teams.
Mm-hmm.
If the Rays find a way to pull that out, one of two things is going to happen.
Moneyball resurgence.
It's either going to be, yes, a Moneyball resurgence, or teams are going to be like, I don't need to spend in order to win ball games, and you're going to see spending go down. That's like the positive and negative side for me with that. I'd prefer more teams to be like, hey, I got to ramp up my analytics department because look at what this team just did. But I don't want teams to look at it and go, oh, Rays only have X $1 million as of payroll. I don't need to spend to win.
Right, like 90% of their roster is still pre-free agency.
Yep.
And half of those guys are pre-ARB. They're all super young and I mean, they're exciting. I mean, we saw Rosarania and Brett Phillips having a dance battle on the field after beating the Yankees. I mean, they're an exciting young team, but I am worried about, teams looking at their model and thinking that we could do that. We don't have to spend this much. We could just, completely tear that. I'm looking at the Rockies, for example, for this sort of thing. We could just tear down what we have, trade for assets, Arenado, Story, Blackman, ship all them out, save money, and, trade them for top 100 prospects and then kind of just build back up in sort of the Rays model. But, I don't think Jeff Brett is just really smart enough for that.
Yeah, the model there, the rebuilding model, I think it's its own issue, but I think if well executed, it's fine. I just don't want teams to look at it and go, I'm never going to sign a big free agent again. Because then you got
the Rockies already don't do that.
So, yeah, I mean, I I'm curious to see how the teams view whoever wins. If the Dodgers win, it's like you need to spend to win. If the Rays, I wonder how teams would view a Rays World Series win, because I know there are enough analysts who kind of hate the analysts, ironically, who hate the analytics. So I'm curious to see if they'll be like, yeah, you can't win on a computer. I know that'll be a phrase. So that's almost why I want the Rays to win at that same point. But
you can also like break it down to like whichever team wins, just developing talent, how important that is.
yeah,
And I think I hope that's what comes out of it, and seeing the homegrown guys. I want to see that become a big point, and how I want to see teams put an emphasis on development of their prospects they already have and drafting.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really
I do
interesting
hope-
because we have like two teams with top 7 or 8 farm systems that could potentially go head to head in the World Series. I mean,
Yep.
Right.
Astros and Braves not so much, but the Dodgers and Rays have some of the best farm systems out there. When you talk about Lux and Franco and Honeywell and Kyrat Ruiz and Andy Pajes, who I think did they trade him? I don't know. But both of these teams have great farm systems. And we see the fruits of that in this year with Dustin May for the Dodgers and Austin Meadows, who kind of came up more through the Pirate system, but he was a prospect when they got him.
Mm-hmm.
So not necessarily a homegrown guy, but just the fruits of their minor league existence finally paying off for them.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I'm very curious to see how. And I do hope teams are like, hey, I need to continue to supplement this talent. I need to learn I need to bulk up my player development staff and figure it out from there.
Absolutely.
So, but let's close the storybook, turn on the TV. Let's talk about what we're watching this week and kind of wrap it up here. Playoff edition again of what to watch for, obviously. So you can either pick the matchup you're watching or something within those matchups. Let the fans know what you are watching this week besides playoff baseball in general. So, Diego, we'll start with you.
Yeah, what I'm watching this week more closely, and like I've mentioned before a million times, I'm a pitching guy. I love pitching, love watching it, and watching the Braves pitching this offseason or postseason. You got me saying it now, Les. This postseason,
It's so easy to do.
It really is, especially when your team's out of it.
Agreed.
But yeah. Anyway, Braves pitching, a lot of fun to watch. Just kind of like the Max Fried, Ian Anderson, Kyle Wright. Like, I mean, these aren't exactly guys besides Fried you'd expect to be shoving and just like getting guys out like over and over and like shutouts. Like the Braves in their 5 games have 4 shutouts. They're 5-0 in the playoffs. I mean, like Joey mentioned earlier, like the unstoppable force, immovable object thing. That's kind of what you're also getting in the Dodgers Braves series here, because the Dodgers have such a potent lineup and the Braves have such an impressive pitching staff this postseason. Like, who's going to end up winning those matchups? Are the Braves going to continue to get these shutouts against the Los Angeles Dodgers, or are you going to see that pitching finally falter a little bit since they're not, pitching against like teams like the Marlins anymore? So I think it's going to be interesting to watch, and I just love watching good pitching, and I'm rooting for the Braves pitching because I want to see the Dodgers lose. It's my favorite thing every postseason is watching the Dodgers end up ultimately losing whenever they lose. Big fan of it. So yeah, Braves pitching. It's a lot of fun to watch, or has been so far. I hope it continues to go through and hopefully carry them to a World Series.
Diego, you're a Giants fan or something?
Maybe a little bit. You wouldn't be able to tell by the Rocky stuff I have on, but
either way.
Yeah.
But Joey, what you watching this week?
I'm watching pitching too, but I'm not watching the Braves pitching. I'm watching the Dodgers pitching. Sorry. I mean, you look at. I know, but you look at their staff. Kershaw's been good. Bueller's been good. May is just so exciting, and their bullpen with, like I said before, Urias, Strinan, and Brewster Gratterall, Kenley Jansen, who's had sort of a little bit of a resurgence this year with mixing up his pitches a little bit more, kind of going away from that cutter a little bit. I think they're super exciting to watch too, and I think they're going to match up pretty well with the Braves offense, because the Braves have been, game 1 of the wild card series, they saw Bauer, but game 2 they hit better, and then they played 3 games against 4A pitchers against the Marlins. Those aren't true big league guys yet, except maybe Alcantara.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the Braves might get a little complacent. I think they're going to do everything they can to not become complacent because they know what they're going up against. But the Dodgers are their pitching is so good. They've got a ton. Yeah, the Dodgers. Yeah, they're pitching. They've got a ton of movement too. Especially, see these pitching ninja clips of Dustin May against Manny Machado and his two seamers running in. It's just the movement that he gets is insane. He's throwing like 101 miles an hour, which I'm glad I'm not a big fan, so I don't want to do that.
Fair.
So I'm watching the Dodgers pitching mostly because I want to see how they do against the Braves with their big offers there. Ozuna, Darno, Freeman, Acuna, all these. The list goes on.
Yeah. No, certainly an interesting pitching match between the two teams there.
Good one.
I think that'll be one where if I had to pick a series that might be more interesting, I think it would be the Dodgers Braves one. I feel those teams are a little bit more evenly matched in terms of their pitching and their hitting abilities. Not saying they're evenly matched because it's clearly the Dodgers who are the favorite. However, I think you can see them more on the same plane than you can where the Rays are at and where the Astros are at this point. But
that's true.
Certainly plenty of fun baseball ahead still for us, folks. That's really going to do it for us, though. I mean, we could talk days and days about baseball, but it's going to be more fun for y'all to watch it. And hopefully what these two fine gentlemen here have told y'all about will get you prepped for the week and get you ready for some more playoff baseball. But obviously, find us at Diamond_Digest on Twitter. Diamond-digest.com is our website where these two fine gentlemen, I keep saying that, but they are wonderful gentlemen. We'll be putting out their stuff, and everybody else on our crew has been putting out great stuff throughout the postseason. In addition, make sure to look for our hot mic streams this week. I know that crew there has been doing a phenomenal job during the postseason, putting together some alternative broadcasts because you and I both know you don't like listening to the ESPN broadcasts, and that's okay to admit, and we are here to give you a way out of having to listen to them. And last but not least,
we only do 4 hours.
What was that?
We only do 4-hour games, it feels like, so.
Oh yeah, we've done some long ones, but it's better to listen to us for those 4 hours, in my opinion.
Exactly.
And then the last thing is too, if you're doing that playoff bracket challenge, that you can win some cool Diamond Digest stuff or some cool postseason stuff. Make sure to fill out the ALCS and NLCS rounds. ESPN makes you updated every week. We'll be posting who the leaders are in the next couple days or so, and then just a reminder. Diego let everybody know he's third, and I don't think I'm going to let you win. I think I'm going to let the fans win.
That's fair.
But you can have the I
want the glory.
Yeah, the glory of winning. So stay close with that. But I think I hear my family yelling in the background, which means it's getting ready to pack up time here for us as we leave Virginia. But anywho, that's going to do it for us, folks. Thanks for listening. For Joey Bohley, Diego Franco-Carreno, the sleeping Cali Sai, who, again, condolences on a couple rough losses this week. This is Jordan Lazowski signing off. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your week, and we'll talk to you next week. See you soon.